Welcome one and all to Umami Manga. I'm Petter and this is James.
Hello!
And today we're talking about volumes 3 and 4 of Vinland Saga. I think this means that we're about halfway through the part of the story that's covered in the anime season 1. I think.
Okay.
Because I heard some people talking in our Discord server about kind of which chapters the anime season covers, and I think, and I checked in like the chapter table of contents kind of thing in the books to see how much that is, and I think that's the first 4 books, aka the first 8 volumes or so, like roughly. So that means we're about halfway through that part. So that's like the part that I know. Well, although again, as I said last time, I remember it very vaguely, which is fun, which is good. But anyway, when this book started, we were 6 years past the point when Thor's had died, and when...
Well, when this book started, he was about 10, and then you fast forward.
Exactly. So, and that was 6 years after, because it said it was in 1008, I think it was, right?
No, he wasn't 4 when Thor's died.
No, well, the woman who takes him in says that he looks like he's barely above 10. That was just what she thought he looked like. I'm thinking he's about 12 there, and that he was 6 when Thor's died.
Okay.
Because the years say that. Thor's died in 1002, and the first chapter of this book takes place in 1008.
Oh, okay.
So it's that's my thinking anyway. And that would also align, if that is the case, that would also align later when the majority of this book takes place in 1013.
Right.
If my assumptions are right, then he would be 17 then, which would match up with Canute's age, who is also 17, and they say they're the same age. At least that's how I'm kind of choosing to look at it.
Fair enough. It makes more sense than, I guess, what I was thinking. I was just thinking he was 16. But...
No, I think he was 16 in like that first chapter of the previous book, because that was a year before, I guess, the majority of this book. So that is still, I think, probably right.
Mm-hmm. It's really cool to see, like we were saying before with the history, but this is getting more into the weeds of what England is like at the time, in terms of the different areas. You know, London is not the grand city that we know now, or would come to know.
Mm-hmm.
And it's fascinating to see how different Wales is with all the different, I guess, provinces, or however you call them, the different kingdoms, I guess.
Right.
And yeah, it really makes you think, or kind of question what you understand the current world to be. You know, how France is a united country, and, you know, the United Kingdom is various different kingdoms.
Yeah.
But those kingdoms were separated into smaller tribes at one point, before being one. So I think about my history, you know, my country's history. The U.S. is relatively very young.
Right. Yeah.
You know, there's very few countries that are younger than the U.S. In terms of history. And for us, we have different states and different backgrounds and ethnicities, but there really wasn't warring kingdoms or tribes. You know, we had our revolution from England, and then we kind of just united from there, and obviously we had our Civil War, but it wasn't like a kingdom per se, and that's really the only conflict we've had between countries. And so it's just fascinating to think that for a long time, you know, these countries that I know to be unified now were once all separated and different. This is just like, oh wow, welcome to world history. Go get a textbook.
Right.
But I don't know. It's not something you think about really until you're seeing stories like this. You know.
Right. That's fair. Like, I think most of Europe was like that. We've all had someone in our history that kind of unified the country at some point. Like Denmark was unified by Harald Bluetooth, like 2 or so generations before Vinland Saga takes place, and like little stuff like that.
That's his real name, by the way. Not joking.
Yeah. I'm actually gonna talk a little bit about him later when we talk
Great.
about Canute, but we'll
Awesome.
get there. We'll get there later. So yeah, onto the characters, starting with Thorfinn. And last time we talked about Leif Erikson. Sadly, he didn't really appear much in this book, but he was a pretty big part of the first two volumes. And obviously, Leif Erikson is a real historical character, and we talked about that last time. But something I didn't realize is that Thorfinn is actually also, at least loosely, based on a real historical person.
Oh, really?
An Icelandic explorer called Thorfinn Thordarson,
Huh.
whose expeditions are documented in the saga of the Greenlanders and the saga of Eric the Red. And these two sagas are collectively referred to as the Vinland Sagas. Title drop, or I don't know. But yeah. So that's some of the inspiration of Yukimura, I think, for this manga.
Wow. No idea.
Yeah. No, I didn't know it either until yesterday when I just read up on some of this, because there was actually a few other characters in this book that are also real historical people, and so it was when I started reading up on those that I found out this as well. So yeah, just really interesting. It's not like a one-to-one perfect, like a completely perfect adaptation of this character exactly, but in a lot of ways it's similar, and it's clear that it's the inspiration for Thorfinn.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So the real Thorfinn, was he alive before Leif Erikson, or
no,
was it
he
after?
lived around the same time.
Same time?
So,
Okay,
like,
cool.
well, like the time that our Thorfinn here, like the fictional Thorfinn, like it is accurate in that regard.
Oh, okay, cool.
And I have been reading about the real Thorfinn and some other characters that appear in these books, and I guess I shouldn't talk too much about what I've read about the historical people in case it's considered spoilers.
Fair, yeah. Maybe we should avoid that then.
Right. I mean, 'cause I don't know how accurately Yukimura is going to go to some of this, but I guess just to be safe, I'm not gonna talk about it necessarily. But
Gotcha.
But yeah, just fun to know that he is actually also inspired by a real person.
Awesome. I like how he shows compassion for the family who saved him at the beginning when he was around, in his young age, I guess around 12.
Yeah.
And maybe perhaps that was a bit of his father, or maybe even, I guess, his mother, coming out. Or I guess at the very least it shows that he has a bit of a compassion in him and doesn't want necessarily to kill everybody in sight. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
you show compassion to him, he's going to want to help you back. Of course, he is a young boy, or a 12-year-old, so I guess that makes sense why he'd be like that.
Yeah.
But, you compare him to the people he's with, the Vikings he's with, and they probably wouldn't care at all.
Exactly. Yeah, and like I also sort of get the feeling that moment when he when he encountered that woman and that woman's daughter, like that may have been the first act of kindness that was shown toward him ever since he joined up with Askeladd, perhaps.
Oh.
Like, obviously we can't say for sure, but at the very least he doesn't get much of that in their when he's
fair.
around them.
Yeah.
And so well, I guess it makes sense for him to have wanted to repay them somehow. Like he hasn't been spoiled with kindness in the past 6 years or so. So obviously it's very tragic that he may have sort of indirectly ended up killing them in a way,
Right.
since he was the one who summoned the Vikings to the shores. And they I mean, we don't see them die there, but they probably died there. We see the broken comb, so that probably indicated that they sadly died.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this book really, like, it goes darker. Like, it really, like, it shows some darker stuff than I think maybe the first one did. Like, there's like rape and other like and just very brutal murdering of women and children and just civilians in general, which is just dreadful. And it really, I guess it makes us understand just what Thorfinn's life is like, having to well, I mean, I guess yeah, he chooses to be with Askeladd and his men, but still, having grown up since about age 6 or so, uh, in the presence of these men, like such a messed up upbringing. Like, oh my god.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think it's also a kudos to him that he's not, I guess, I don't know. It's hard to say it's temptation, but he hasn't become like them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, for sure, for sure.
And just gone with the flow in that sense. And even he says to Askeladd that, look, don't get me wrong. I'm not like your men. I'm not like you guys. I am here for one reason only. And he, of course, Askeladd kind of laughs it off. But yeah, I think it goes to show that he does view him, or he does feel like he's a little morally different than these other guys. But
yeah,
he's still a killer in a sense.
No, yeah, I mean, absolutely. Sadly, he is.
Yeah.
But he does. There's one point in this book when he starts to, or it seems like he's starting to see how dreadful war is, or he's starting to at least grow tired of war. But I think he also dislikes it just in general. Is starting to really see that, and I think that really, like, I guess it gave me the idea that his character journey is probably going to lead to a similar place where his father was, where I don't know if he's going to become a full-on pacifist, although that would be amazing, but at the very least start to understand his father much better. And I think this is a small step in that direction. Obviously, he's nowhere near there yet, but just slightly in that direction, which I think is great.
Yeah, he says, like, what's so fun about war? Like, and
right.
Basically he gets his butt handed to him and his arms dislocated or shoulders dislocated and everything. But they had to keep marching forward. And part of that could just be the Viking mentality and how much they just glorify war.
Yeah.
And maybe, like you were saying, to him, it's just there is no rest, there is no stopping to it when you're in war, So maybe that's where his complaints come from. But speaking of that moment, I guess just before that, and why he's beat up like that fight with Thorkell is, or however you're supposed to pronounce it, is great. I thought it was so well done.
Yes, it is. It really is. Really, I will say that is definitely one of the scenes from the anime that I remember vividly. So yeah, such a good action scene.
And I liked how I just like what Thorfinn was able to do against a person who is maybe even three times his size.
Yeah, right.
He doesn't get along with the prince very well, but that could be just the start of some sort of friendship, Yeah,
I hope so. Like that would be nice, but it's definitely a bit shaky right now.
Yeah,
because they're just polar opposites of one another. It's fun though.
At the very least, you can say, not that Thorfinn was trying to, but Thorfinn, for whatever reason, was able to get the prince to just come out of his shell a little bit,
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think he did a great job with that.
A great job. I mean...
No, I think so.
I don't think he meant to do it,
Yeah.
And that's all I have on Thorfinn.
Yeah, I don't actually have anything else either. He was mostly... I mean, he did a lot of good stuff in these 2 volumes, but he was largely kind of a bystander as well, I think, which is why there might not have been all that much on him. But anyway,
I guess there was the vision that he had of his family and his father.
True.
And I guess the one thing I'll take away from that is that his father in the dream asks him to return to his mother and daughter, or mother and sister,
right,
and protect them or something like that. So I wonder if that'll become a thing that he does eventually. Yeah,
I really hope so. I mean, at some point he's got to return to Iceland, right? Like
I hope so.
It's gotta. Like, he's been away for 11 years. It's gotta happen at some point.
Hmm.
But I agree. And I guess I'll mention one last little thing about that, which I thought was a nice little thing that Yukimura had done his research on, is that they're celebrating Yule, or they're
Oh
about to
yeah.
celebrate Yule in that dream that he had, or nightmare, I suppose it became. But anyway,
Hmm.
and Yule, it is explained in like the translator's notes at the end of the book here, but it is basically like the Nordic or kind of Germanic Nordic thing that we were doing in this part of the world before Christianity kind of made or introduced Christmas to
Hmm.
to us, and then it kind of became a mixture of the two, but it's now called Christmas. At least in English, it's called
Hmm.
Christmas, but we still have the word jul in Swedish. It's Christmas is called jul,
Hmm.
so we still have that word, even though it is exactly the same thing as Christmas.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty cool how it's still kind of there. But anyway, moving on to Askeladd next. And so something I touched on a little bit last time was his when he introduced himself before duels, he mentioned his forefather Artorius, which I I mentioned like a second century Roman commander or something, I think, last time, who was named Artorius, but I wasn't sure if that was what he was actually referring to and stuff like that. But
Hmm.
in this book, we got to confirm that it's a supposedly also at least of Roman heritage, but in like on the British Isles, a commander or something called Artorius in the 5th and 6th centuries. However, I tried to look that historical person up online, and I couldn't find anything at all on that Artorius, who lived like in that era. And so I'm sort of thinking that that might have been something like some kind of creative liberty that Yukimura took, because the legend of King Arthur supposedly takes place around that time.
Hmm.
Um, so and that is also what, according to Yukimura in the book here, like the explanation is that this historical person Artorius was kind of what inspired the legend of King Arthur.
Hmm.
But there isn't, supposedly, at least from my from what I've been able to find online, there isn't a distinct historical person that was the inspiration for King Arthur. Like a lot of historians kind of agree that there isn't really one person that really
Yeah, I mean,
fit into that mold.
it's got to be fictitious.
Right, yeah. So I'm thinking this Artorius is probably a made up fictional character or made up historical character um, by Yukimura. Just wanted to kind of mention that. However, if someone knows something else and is listening on YouTube, please let us know. But I couldn't find any other Artorius or any Artorius that fitted the description that we got through Yukimura's kind of narration in this book. But anyway, we know now anyway that Askeladd's presumed ancestor is King Arthur from the legend, or at least the historical person who inspired him, according to this world here.
Okay, so I guess I was kind of confused on who his ancestor was, but so he is indeed saying that his ancestor is Artorius.
Yeah, and that this Lydia was, I guess, the last known descendant of Artorius,
Mm-hmm.
supposedly, and that was his mother,
Yeah, interesting.
making him the last person of King Arthur's bloodline.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, it sounds really grand and kind of fantastical, and I don't know how much I can trust him when he says these things. Gratianus seemed to back him up, but I mean, we don't really know him that well, so I don't know
Right.
how well he can be trusted
Yeah,
either.
that's why I kind of like. I don't know. I wasn't sure how to believe how much to believe him in saying that he was the descendant of this Artorias person.
Hmm.
But especially since they mention Artorias earlier on in the book,
Yeah.
and with the sword and everything. So I just wasn't sure if that was true or not. But anyway, the point still stands that Artorias is there. He claims he is, and or Askeladd claims he is the descendant,
Yeah.
and that apparently it's what's inspired King Arthur. Um,
Hmm.
although I feel like I've heard something like that before, that King Arthur was inspired by some other legend.
Yeah, I mean, there are a couple of candidates, or at least from what I've read up on recently, there are a couple of candidates that are like potentially one of these, but most historians seem to agree that none of them really add, like, it doesn't really add up for either of them. So it's really like there isn't a one historical person that really completely fits, supposedly, at least from what I've been able to understand.
Okay, understood.
Unless this Artorias person that is described in this book actually is a really historical character. I wasn't able to find anything on him online. But it's possible that maybe there is, actually. I don't know. But yeah.
Anyway, I think it's a really cool twist that Askeladd is half Danish and then half Welsh. Is that
that's what he says? Yeah,
accurate to say? Okay. Yeah, so I think it's a cool or interesting twist in it all, and I always wondered why he wore that chest plate like he did, because to me it did kind of feel like it was a little like Roman-like. No one else was wearing a chest plate like that.
Oh, I didn't think about that. Oh.
So I was wondering why was that exactly, and so maybe that's some of his like Welsh ness coming. I don't know. Right. But anyway, I think that was an interesting twist. Plus the fact that he basically says, "I hate the Danes."
Exactly. Yeah. What do you think about that? Because I wasn't sure. Like, did he say that just to kind of win some good points with Asser, or did he actually mean it? What do you think?
I'll be honest. I actually thought he meant it, and I don't think he means about his men, who are obviously Vikings, Danish. I think he meant more about the country itself, and just, basically stealing his mom like that.
Right.
But you bring a good point. Why wouldn't he try to gain favor by telling them something like that? But my thinking is, Askeladd seems to be someone who thinks about himself, or where he's more thought is about himself and his men, and not about the country he's serving. So I wouldn't be surprised if he were to turn around and say, "Yeah, I hate the Danes. I also hate the Welsh. I hate all you countries."
Fair, yeah, actually. Yeah.
But you do bring a good point. Perhaps he's just using them.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, at least he seems to be pretty full of himself, and he seems to really embrace the fact that he is the descendant of Artorias. Like, he really kind of
fair.
He kind of mentions it at like any chance he gets, sort of. And if he takes so much pride in that, in like the Welsh side of him, then maybe he is speaking the truth. I don't know. I just keep I can't trust him, so I have to question like anything he says.
Yeah. He is kind of snake-like in that way.
Yeah, but I do love him.
Oh yeah, no. Great character, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, and he has very great ambitions, like that he wants to achieve using his bloodline to his advantage. And at least as he explains, as how he might be able to benefit from being on good terms with Prince Canute and stuff like that.
Yeah, so about that, he starts off not particularly caring about Canute, and maybe that continues on towards the end of this book. And he feels as though he's not able to be a king. And I wonder, well, he says that it's because I know by his face that he's just not able to do that. And I wonder, I'll get to my point eventually.
Yeah, so
he's talking to Bjorn. I can't never pronounce his name right.
Bjorn.
Bjorn. And they're talking, and then he says, well, he's still just a lad. And then Bjorn is like, wait, what do you mean? Or are you trying to say something? And then it just cuts off and ends there, which frustrates me because you don't. What was he trying to say? So I speculate. Well, what did Askeladd think about him? Could it be that maybe he does think there's potential there? Um, but that seems so far fetched. Like he seems so taken aback about his looks and just his
Mm.
demeanor. And
Right.
obviously we'll talk about him later. But
Mm.
I don't know. To me, it seems like he wanted to use the prince as maybe a pawn or something like that. But because he's so timid and not a leader of men, then he's like, well, I can't even use him for that. I can't even use him as
Hmm.
a stepping stool. You know, who's going to want to rally behind that?
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's kind of my thinking. But I don't know if there's some other meanings, like he's actually a girl. Like that just seems like a plot point that one wouldn't go along with this story, and two, it's been done to high heavens, people. Enough.
Uh-huh. Yeah. You're right. Mm. But yeah. His thoughts on Canute is, or like, it's definitely a bit kind of dubious right now. Hard to kind of know
Mhm.
exactly where, like what he thinks on it. But
It's not one of loyalty, I'll say that.
right.
I don't think he particularly cares for the royalty of Denmark.
No, I definitely agree there. So yeah, just exciting to see where that's gonna lead, or kind of
Yeah.
what it's gonna do with this whole situation that
Right.
he's created. Anything more on Askeladd?
He believes that Ragnarok is near.
Oh yeah.
And I think this kind of ties into what his potential plans, I guess, could be for Canute, or how he thinks about that. And he sees the opportunity that, basically, the opportunity of getting Canute and using him as a pawn, potentially as a way to get the leg up in Ragnarok. I don't know. I didn't quite understand why he was feeling like this was the end of mankind, or like we were starting around that path. Is this implying that the Viking rule is coming to an end? Does he actually have these beliefs that the end of the world is coming?
Well, I got the feeling that he was combining it with the Christian beliefs that Judgment Day was coming,
Yes.
and that basically it was a similar prophecy. Like they were talking about the same thing, just kind of in slightly different ways.
Right. To me, I just don't think Askeladd would believe that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
You know,
Hmm.
like he doesn't even not just Christianity, but the Norse mythology. It doesn't seem like something that he really particularly cares about. I mean, maybe he uses it for his own gain and to gain the trust of the other Vikings, but
Hmm.
I just don't see him as one to care about getting into Valhalla, or where his placement is come Judgment Day.
Right. Yeah. Maybe.
But I could be overthinking it. But we had a whole chapter that was called Ragnarok, and then him pontificated about it, and then saying, "Okay, Ragnarok's about to happen." Like, why? Like, what is his Ragnarok? What is this? What is
Okay.
he trying to imply?
Oh yeah. I don't think he is foreseeing the end of the Viking Age. I don't think that.
Okay.
Because he seems like the reason why he's fighting for Denmark is because he's convinced that Denmark is going to win the war against England.
Yeah. Fair.
And so with that in mind, I don't think he is foreseeing the end of the Viking Age. But yeah, if there is some other kind of meaning to that, I don't know. But I mean, there could be. I just don't have any idea really.
So you're thinking it is more of a, he does think that Judgment Day is close.
It's my best idea. Anyway,
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. I mean, fair enough, Mike.
But he is a hard
I
man
have
to
no
read.
idea. Yeah, true. I think that's all I have on him.
Okay, then moving on to Thorkell. Such a fun character. And he really lives for a good fight.
Lives for a good fight is an interesting way to put it. Yeah, I mean, but he's definitely in it for the fun.
He's actually one of the historical people introduced in this book that's, based on a real historical person.
Nice.
Thorkell the Tall was a Viking that lived at that age, like around that time, and
Cool.
I did read up a little bit on him. Not gonna tell you everything that I read about, because it might happen maybe in the future of the manga, but yeah, just fun to see another historical character introduced into the story.
Yeah, absolute monster. I mean,
Yeah.
when they say the tall, they really mean it. Like, holy crap.
Yeah, it's so fun with these titles that like, at least in Europe, people were getting, like, because there was that one, the English king was like, was it something the Unready? Like, and that's like the least flattering title you can get.
Yeah.
Like, because he wasn't ready for the war or something like that. He gets that title, and that's what he's known as, like in the history books. But yeah, Thorkell the Tall. I guess that's a better title than the Unready.
Do you know how tall he was? Like,
No, I didn't,
got
or
any
I didn't
history?
find anything on that, sadly. But, and I don't
I
know.
wonder in comparison to nowadays. Like, was he
Fair, right? He might just have
as
been
tall as a
average
basketball player?
these
or-
days. Yeah. No, but like, I mean, I can only assume he was tall, at least for the age. Plus, Vikings were in general taller than most other people, on average.
Yeah.
So
I
he
see
must have
that.
been very tall compared to like the English, like
Yeah.
for example.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Oh, English. So, speaking of the English, he willingly sides with the weaker side
Yeah.
because it just sounds more fun. Doesn't it get boring to be on the winning side all the time? It was such an interesting way of thinking.
Yeah, I love that. He's such a fun character.
Yeah.
And he loses 2 fingers and he just smiles. Like, that was fun.
Gosh.
That was a good fight.
And the way he just talks about, fighting certain people, like Thorfinn, for example, it's like, we'll finish this when we meet again, okay? I promise.
Yeah.
Keep in touch. Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost cute, honestly.
Yeah.
But yeah, he needs no sword when he fights. Does that make him a true warrior?
Oh.
I mean, we know
Depends on
that
who you ask.
according to him, he knew Thor's.
Yeah.
So I wonder,
And Helga, maybe.
and Helga too. I wonder, had Thor's perhaps said this to him in their past? Had Thor said that whole thing about a true warrior needs no sword, and maybe that's why Thorkell doesn't use a sword.
Oh, wow.
Maybe. I don't know. Just an idea that came to my mind.
That's kind of cool.
Could be.
Wow, no, that's a great. I didn't even put that together because Thorkell does say that Thor's was a true hero, right? Or true warrior, right?
I think so. At least he says that he was the only one that he couldn't defeat, or he was the only one better than him.
Yeah, I that's another kind of plot point I'm excited to see more of, where Thorfinn and Thorkell finally meet again, and
Yeah.
hopefully Thorfinn is willing to listen to what Thorkell knows. Like, maybe we can get a little more backstory for Thor's and Helga.
Exactly. Yeah. And I suppose a lot of that backstory can also come from Helga, but sadly she and Ylva are kind of mostly out of the story for the time being. So maybe it is more likely to get it from Thorkell, as you said.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I agree. Should be good. Anything more on Thorkell?
Does the Uno reverse card and Rex the leftover siege with his men is just crazy. Gosh.
I also like how he tossed the log down. He was like, log drop or whatever. Like he named the move. It's like such an anime manga kind of thing to do.
Ooh, I'm pretty good at this.
I wonder if the Vikings actually did that.
Who knows?
Like
That's
naming
a good
their
question.
moves like that. Moving on to Canute, and just one thing real quick I want to kick off by saying about his name is that it's a weird name in English, because the name Canute actually doesn't have a vowel between the K sound and the N sound.
Oh.
In English, that sound kn doesn't really exist, because whenever there's a K and an N, you just like the K is silent in the English language.
Knife.
Right, knife and
Knight.
exactly, yeah. So the kn sound doesn't really exist because of that in the English language, but it does in the Scandinavian languages. And Knut is, even to this day, a relatively common name in our countries.
Knut.
So it's just Knut. But I know that some people that I've talked about this kind of thing with that are English speaking, they struggle with just making the Knut sound without kind of subconsciously putting in a vowel sound between there. But anyway, yeah, that is. It should technically be Knut.
Knut.
Yes, or I think the actual like Old Norse way is like Knuter or something like that. But that's overboard. I'm not even. But anyway, yeah. He is the other one of the historical people introduced in this book.
Oh.
And would you like me to tell you what historical name he is known by?
Sure.
Knut the Great.
Oh.
So.
Dang.
Yeah, without saying anything more, I'll just I just figured it would be cool to at least kind of just quote unquote spoil that, although it's not. I wouldn't say it's a spoiler. I mean, this is history after all. But yeah, just a fun little thing to I guess think about at least. Like, I guess you don't necessarily need to read up on him, but knowing that is pretty interesting, I think.
Yeah.
Something great will happen, I suppose.
Awesome. That actually gets me more excited for the character. Not that I thought there wouldn't be any character progression, but I don't know, that kind of gets me really, really hyped.
Awesome. That's great to hear. And Knut's father, as we learn in this book, is Svein Forkbeard. And Svein, and then going even one generation further back, Svein's father was Harald Bluetooth.
Oh,
and
okay.
That's the guy I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, and James and I had talked about him a little bit off recording 2 weeks ago or so after we had recorded the previous book discussion. And I figured since Knut was introduced here, I just want to mention this little thing that I talked to you about on the recording because it's kind of fun. And this actually is not something, I didn't mention this to James because I knew Knut was the grandson of Harald Bluetooth. I didn't actually know that until yesterday when I did some research on this. But the Bluetooth technology that has existed since 1997 was named after Harald Bluetooth. And when we talked about this last, off recording, I didn't know why they chose the name. I think it just seemed kind of random at the time. But I have since found out that there is a kind of a funny reason. The idea is that the Bluetooth technology would unite devices, much like Harald Bluetooth united the Danish tribes into one kingdom. So, yeah, just a funny little thing like that. Plus, also the icon for the Bluetooth technology, it's like it looks kind of like a B, but it's also got like an X kind of in the middle, or I don't know how to describe it, but anyway. Most people probably have a rough idea anyway of what it looked like. It's actually a combination of two runes. It's the rune, the H rune and the B rune, like Harald Bluetooth. It's like his initials essentially, but kind of melded into one symbol to make the Bluetooth symbol. Because the H is like a vertical line with an X in it, and the B is essentially a B, but with just straight lines to make the B.
So here's a question. With Thor's and Thorfinn and a lot of the other guys, they say their first name and they say son of, their father.
Yeah.
And that seems to be kind of a last name situation.
Mm-hmm.
But clearly, these kings, their last name are different. I guess they earn the last name or something.
Yeah, I'm thinking at least when it comes to royalty, it might be different, right?
Maybe they choose what their last name is known as.
Maybe.
Okay, I just wasn't sure if that was a naming convention thing that I just wasn't understanding or whatnot.
Yeah, no, but it's like an exception to the norm, I would probably say, because I think most people's last names are like their father's name and then son or daughter after that.
Gotcha.
is like the regular last name system. But the last thing I'll say about Harold Bluetooth, just real quick, or as quickly as I can at least, is something that I mentioned to James off recording, is that I have a relative who is like crazy into genealogy, and like he does a great and very, very thorough job with it. He has traced our family tree like all the way back to like before year zero, and like beyond, like further beyond that. Like he's crazy, but he's I mean, he's super cool. But he's like really, really into it, and does just a very great job with that. And now it's been a while since I talked with him, but I do remember from last time we talked, and like he showed me his whole research, and like all of like his very like, well, the family tree in his computer that he had assembled and put together, that we are direct descendants of Harold Bluetooth. And since it's been a while, I can't remember kind of, well, how exactly the branch went from there, so I can't say if I'm a direct descendant of Canute as well. I guess it's possible, but at the very least, I am a direct descendant of Harold Bluetooth, and I guess maybe of Canute, although that, yeah, just can't know for sure. but yeah, I just think that's kind of cool. Although, to be fair, a lot of people, at least in this part of the world where I live, are probably descendants of someone known, just based on that it's been such a long time. So like there are so many branches, that would go out of any historical person from that day and age. So it's not like the coolest thing in the world. But yeah, to me it's fun that I'm a direct descendant of Knute's grandfather.
I think it's neat.
But yeah.
Well, Canute in Vinland Saga, this manga,
yes,
looks very, very feminine. Like, you know, the puffy lips, the big eyes. It just is, everything about him looks pretty feminine. But beyond that, he's quiet, kind of shy, keeps to himself, timid. Qualities that you probably don't usually associate with a bloodthirsty Viking.
Yeah, for sure.
And I could definitely see why some people would be kind of hesitant to lay down their lives for someone who doesn't seem very manly or kingly in that time of age.
Absolutely, and on top of that, he's also spoiled and very sheltered in a lot of ways, and like that even further adds to his, I guess, unprofessionality as a leader.
Yeah. So, as I said earlier, at the very end of the book, he seems to come out of his shell a little bit. That's great. And I think that is a sign that he will eventually get to the point where maybe he does actually become a leader. And getting a title like the Great seems to indicate that.
Yes. Seems like it. And like on that, like as you were talking about near the end of the book, when he just really opened up much more than he had before. On one page, he tells Thorfinn that there's certain things that he can't do, such as expressing his anger. And then literally on the next page, what's he doing? He's expressing his anger, like very, very clearly to Thorfinn. Okay.
If you were royalty, I'd smack you.
So yeah, I definitely look forward to seeing him grow, because I feel like there's a lot of room for that.
Yeah. We can't talk about Canute without Ragnar, I think.
Absolutely. Yes, let's talk about Ragnar. He seems to love Canute almost as if though he was his own child. I sort of get that.
I get that same
vibe.
feeling. Kind of like a foster father type of situation.
Right. Because Svein, his actual father, doesn't seem to be that much of a father to him. So in a way, it's good. Ragnar, like he's a good guy in that way, and I'm glad that I'm happy for Canute that he's had Ragnar in his life. But at the same time, he has definitely, like, he may have been maybe a bit too, like, he has been sheltering Canute a bit too much.
Yeah,
like stuff
too
like
protective
that.
Maybe.
Right, too protective probably. I understand that might be a hard thing to balance, but So like it's not like I'm
Mm-hmm.
necessarily blaming Ragnar for this or for that, but
It's a darn Christian mindset, man.
yeah, right.
Teach him that poison. Come on. So he's talking to Thorkell, basically accusing him knowing nothing of the royal court or Canute,
Mm.
and I wonder what he meant by that. I guess as it's implied later on in the story that growing up in the royal court for a kind of timid boy like him was really tough. I mean,
Mm.
I guess from what I understand, it's just as rowdy as a battlefield at that court. You know, people killing each other, fighting. So maybe that's what he was implying, that it's not as easy as he doesn't have an easy life as you think.
Mm.
But maybe there's something more there.
Yeah, I wonder if we'll get to know more like other family members of Knut's, like his father and his. I think he has a brother. Was that mentioned in the book?
For some reason, I felt like Canute the youngest son of King Sven?
I can't remember.
Svein? How do you pronounce it?
I mean, Sven is like the present day name. I think Svein with like this that vowel sound is like how they said it back then.
Okay, Svein.
But I can't actually remember what they said about his siblings in the book here. So I know he had at least a brother though, which is something I remembered from reading about the historical person. But at the very least, I think it would be fun to explore his family a bit more.
I agree.
But Ragnar, he says that a wise man never parts from his weapon. It's basically the complete opposite idea of Thor's, who says that, you know, a true warrior needs no sword. So I thought that was a funny little thing. I wonder, I don't know if it has any more meaning than just, well, what it is, but yeah, I thought it was interesting. And at the end, when Canute was, well, kind of more lashing out at Thorfinn, at first I thought Ragnar would kind of butt in and kind of try to stop it, or kind of, well, yeah, just do something about it at all. But I'm glad that he didn't. Like he was just he just let things play out as they did, which might point toward him, I guess, letting Canute go, letting him grow a little bit more, perhaps. At least, assuming he has been sheltering Canute a bit too much in the past, this is probably a good thing, that just let Canute live, just let him be, and kind of, I guess, have his own bad or good experiences.
Yeah, sometimes you gotta let people fall and fail in order for them to learn and succeed.
Right, exactly. So I did like that. Anything more on Ragnar?
No, not really.
All right, then moving on to Father Willibald, the drunken priest.
Yeah, interesting character.
Yeah, definitely.
That's like my best description of everybody. You know? I gotta really get better at how I describe things.
There are a lot of interesting characters in these books, though.
Yeah.
To be fair,
I'll toast to that. No, I think that him in particular, he's another one of these characters that is a little hard to read and sometimes cryptic, although that's the point. I don't know. I'm excited to kind of learn more about his thinking and what he brings to the story in terms of, I guess, the mentality of the times.
Yeah.
Because it's a stark contrast from the Vikings who adore and glorify war and bloodshed versus at least the mentality of a friar or a priest, whatever you call it, who, I mean, at least according to his duty and calling, as far as I understand, is going to be more about pacification. Being a pacifist and, as he puts it, love.
Yeah.
That brings a whole interesting question into the story: is what is love?
Exactly.
What do you think? Because what confuses me is he says love,
Mm.
and then the Vikings are like, love? What's that? like, surely there's a word for love,
Yeah.
you know?
Mm-hmm. That did confuse me as well. Like, because I would have also assumed that in Old Norse there would have been a word for love. Um, so I don't know about that, but I was wondering, and I can't really think of any sort of explanation to it. But what I was kind of pondering about, or kind of wondering about, was what was the specific exact type of love that Willibald was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And my best guess is kind of the love of God.
Mm-hmm.
Was my idea there. What did you think about that?
Oh, I think that's pretty dead on.
Mm.
You know what's interesting is two Vikings come up to him and say, "Hey, I got my brother's back. He's got mine. We're there for each other. That's love, right?" And he said, "Oh, that's a little different," which I thought they were onto something there, but
Right.
I guess not.
Well, I think Willibald was sort of maybe like he was a little bit prone to agreeing with them until they said that they wouldn't do it with him, like they would only do it with each other.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where Willibald seemed to kind of back off from that being the same type of love that he was desiring.
Good point. So my interpretation of what it could be, and that's why I'm wondering what the Japanese said. I kind of want to watch the anime and see the exact word they use. Because if it's just I, which is obviously love, then, the point is moot. But
Oh yeah.
I think if they said charity, which I believe is GI,
Oh.
that could be definitely translated differently. And it's not usually a common word used. Charity, in English has become kind of a donate your money to charity kind of a thing. But in a religious context, charity is pure love. And in a sense is associated with God's love.
Ah, I see.
And in Christianic scripture, or maybe I should say Christian scripture, charity is the true love of God and is like the most powerful thing among all other powers in the world, or something along those lines. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's what he was searching for in a way.
Right. Yeah.
And I think it also goes to Jesus Christ dying for the sins of the world, and how I think, I forget who says it, but someone says in the Bible that no man had greater love than this, than one who dies for his friends, or something along those lines. And so I think there could be some sort of indication that we as humans should value life instead of trying to end life.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what this priest is trying to, the message he's trying to send to these Vikings. But I don't know.
Yeah, no, I like that idea. It definitely seems like a really good possibility, I think. Especially considering he tried to warn the village people of the Vikings. So he definitely seems to he wants to avoid that kind of bloodshed.
Right. And I do think it boils down to the love of God. And I according to probably his beliefs, God cares about all his children, and would probably not want them to die,
Right.
per se. So I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say exactly what the beliefs are, especially in those times. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I feel like that's what he's trying to get at. It still kind of baffles me that the Vikings wouldn't be able to comprehend that, but it is kind of an interesting dynamic between what the Vikings glorify and potentially what the Christians, or at least this priest, glorifies.
Right. And I guess we could also consider that these Vikings that were interacting with him were maybe not the brightest people,
Good point. Yeah.
Could be that to a degree as well, but yeah, obviously there has got to be like some sort of cultural difference as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a very interesting part of the story. My last thing on Father Willibald is that he reacted strangely when the other Vikings mentioned Thor's quote about a true warrior needs no sword. And I wonder why he reacted that way. Is it maybe because did he maybe used to know Thor's as well?
Ooh,
Like, is he another one of those
so juicy.
people that knew him? Maybe. Because I don't know why else he would react like that to hearing that, unless he had heard Thor's perhaps say that himself at some point. What do you think?
Part of my reaction to that was maybe that saying is close to the love he's searching for, because maybe his interpretation of that is someone who doesn't, kill. You know what I mean?
Right.
But I like the idea very much that he knows Thor's in some way, and maybe that explains where Helga came from as well. I'm not implying that she's royalty, but some sort of maybe a chief where Willibald is from. Maybe there's a connection there.
Maybe,
I don't know.
Maybe. So, moving on to Ylva. It was really sad to see how much she really repressed kind of the sadness over her dad dying and her brother going missing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she just tried to keep herself as busy as possible to try to not think about it. Which, I mean, I can understand that mindset. Just, like, as long as you got other things to think about it, you can kind of try to ignore sad things in life. But obviously you can't do that forever. And yeah, it was really that, like, the extra chapter, which I think, other than that extra chapter, all of the other ones have just been kind of like funny little gags. But this one was actually important to the story, I thought.
Right.
Because it really showed her, well, just how she dealt with the loss of her father and brother. And I thought it was really a really good chapter, very strong.
Yeah, I agree. And not only did it show that, yes, losing her father and brother was hard, and she needed to cope in some way, but it shows, I think, that she's incredibly capable. Yes, she was doing too much, but she's not gonna necessarily let it stop her from doing the things that need to get done.
Right.
So yeah, I appreciate her resolve in that sense. But yeah, I also like the more, well, it's all human, but the kind of more vulnerable side where, she finally started crying and let her feelings go.
Yeah. Yeah, and I wonder, like, 'cause at this point, we can assume, I think it's pretty safe to assume that Thorfinn hasn't been to Iceland in these 11 years that have passed since he left.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't know anything about him having kind of tried to send messages or anything like that, so I think we can probably rule that out as well. So, as far as Ylva and Helga are concerned, Thorfinn is probably dead. Like, that's probably what they think.
Yeah.
So I wonder. I guess I just keep wondering when and how that reunion is gonna happen, and if, I guess I should also add. I really hope it will happen, though.
So how long has it been since Thorfinn left?
It's been 11 years.
11 years.
Yeah, they left in 1002, and now it's 1013.
So who knows when, or what's going on right now with that village? I mean, maybe they're able to.
Oh yeah.
Work just fine, but I mean, when we get this bonus chapter, this is the same year that they disappear. Well,
I think
Thor's dies.
Maybe a year after, but
maybe
not more than that.
Right.
But yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, it goes back to what I was thinking about before, and just are they gonna be okay? Is that guy with chains? I can't remember his name.
Halfdan.
Halfdan is has something bad gonna happen with him?
Yeah.
Or maybe they're just perfectly fine, and he goes back.
Really hope they're fine. Really hope they're fine.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I hope that too.
It would be awful if Thorfinn returns there, like, maybe a few years from now, and it's just all destroyed or something like that. That would.
Oh, that'd be terrible.
Oh no. Yeah. Oh man. Anyway, yeah. Anything more on Ylva or on Helga? If there's anything on her too, I guess there isn't. Probably. Then moving on to Björn, and something I forgot to mention last time about his name. Because we talked a little bit about his name, but another thing I didn't mention, which I think is just an interesting little tidbit, is that Björn literally means bear in Swedish, and all of the Scandinavian languages, I would assume, and it is like a relatively common name, in addition to meaning literally being the word for bear.
I've definitely heard it before.
Right, yeah. It's definitely like a Scandinavian name, and it's funny, like it's not like we necessarily always think about a bear whenever we hear the name Björn, even though it is exactly what we call a bear. It is equally as much a male name as it is the name for bear. So I guess that's why I forgot to mention that last time. But yeah, just thought that was good to mention, since I mean it fits with his character, considering he is this big burly man kind of, or like this berserk guy.
Yeah. He's not in it for the gold, he's in it for the killing.
Yeah, that too. Yeah. Right. So I guess he and Thorkell are, I guess, a little bit alike in that regard.
A little bit alike.
Well, I think Thorkell is probably more in for the fight.
Yeah.
To be precise, but still.
Exactly.
But Björn has known Askeladd probably longer than any of Askeladd's other men. It seems to be implied, and but even though he has known him for such a long time, he still feels like he doesn't really know Askeladd that well, and he seems to be a bit bothered by that in one of these chapters. And I don't know if that's going to be something that's going to continue, like a thread that will get more from, but it was interesting, I thought, and I mean, it's true, Askeladd is a very mysterious person, but I guess it's fun to know that even to supposedly the person that is closest to him, he's also a mystery even to him.
Yeah.
And this wasn't specifically related to Björn, but using cow thief as an insult seems to be incredibly incredibly bad.
That's a terrible thing to say to somebody. I mean, talk about disrespectful.
I mean, fair, yeah. Like, and I understand at the time.
I'm kidding.
But no, but like, I mean,
totally joking.
At the time, I understand that I guess I don't understand it exactly, but I can definitely see why it would like hold so much weight. But it was definitely a funny scene, because obviously these days that's just like, well, what? Like, cow thief? But yeah, that was funny. Like, that was like the one thing you could say, and Björn would be like, okay, then in that case, keep the fight going. Just report to Askeladd who dies. Like, that was funny. But anyway, anything more on Björn?
No.
Okay, then the last character that I have notes for here is the girl in the last chapter called Anne.
Oh yeah.
Who had stolen a ring from a market, and I felt just so sorry for her for having to, like, living with that, like, just immense fear of damnation. It's got to be fucking like terrible. And I guess especially in that day and age, it was probably very common for people to have that sort of fear. Just really sad.
I think what's interesting about Anne is she goes from feeling that fear of damnation to then having like the thrill of it all. Kind of, it's like someone. I used to be a good girl, but now I'm a bad girl. Like, now it's too fun. I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying like that's something to take away from it, but it's interesting that even though her entire village was murdered, plundered, she kind of gets a thrill out of it.
Right. Yeah.
It'd be interesting to see her journey, if there is anything. I know there's so many characters already, but yeah. I wouldn't mind seeing her side of it. Oh, it could be a side of debauchery.
Yeah, like I'm really unsure. Because as you say, there are already a lot of characters, and there were characters in the previous book that didn't appear at all in this one. For example, Hordaland, we talked about her,
Right. Yeah.
who I was really excited to see more of, but she didn't appear at all in this, or well, in these two volumes.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I guess I can't know if Anne is gonna play more of a role. I hope she will though, because I think she has an interesting thing going. And she could be, assuming she survives, getting through the blizzard and
Yeah.
and also not being followed by Askeladd's men, because there's snow there. People should be able to track her, unless the blizzard covers her tracks, which I guess I hope it does. But anyway, if she gets through that, she could be the one to kind of spread word of the Vikings having taken over that village. But yeah, I am interested in her.
I guess just on the sadder note, just entire village
Yeah,
being murdered like that. Oh gosh,
that was brutal.
Even though she kind of got a thrill out of it, I think it was still scarring for her to see that and everything.
Absolutely, and like while she through her kind of thought monologue, we understood that there was some sort of thrill like feeling that she got out of that. I feel like being in those sorts of really incredible, intense situations, it's hard to know how you're going to react and how you're going to feel. I think, like, I've never been in a situation equivalent to the one that she was in right there, so I don't know how I would react, or like, I think most people can't really say how they would react in a situation that is so unusual.
Mm-hmm.
So, while she felt the similar kind of thrill as when she stole the ring, that doesn't necessarily mean that it was a good kind of feeling.
I don't know. The way she describes the Vikings, it makes them sound not heroic, but admirable.
You think?
Yeah, I mean, she talks about how they're so bold and daring and unafraid of your judgment. That sounds like positive things. You know what I mean?
I see.
And it's clearly a conflict within her that she's been raised to believe in this God and his commandments and his ways. But then she sees these Vikings who don't care about any of that, obviously, probably obviously lack of not even knowing about her teachings. And she sees that and admires that greatly. So it's a conflict. It's like, well, this is how I was raised to believe, but then they have these people who they're not bound by these beliefs, which
right.
I don't know. I guess it's a confliction in her, in a way. I'm not sure which way that would turn for her. But yeah, just something that I was thinking about.
Yeah, no, that is a good point. So I guess I'm a little bit torn now on how to read her. But and now after this, I really, really hope to see more of her.
I do too.
I think she has great potential to be a very interesting character.
But if you don't see her again, that's I guess that's good enough. I guess it's just you introduce this character and she has this kind of introduction into the story that it leaves an impact, and you kind of want to see more of it.
Yeah.
But I guess you could give it up to Yukimura for introducing so many characters, but with different, I guess, important levels of importance, and yet they still have an impact.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. Definitely very, very well done. And, I'm still, part of me is still keeping up hope to see Hordaland again. And I don't know if there's any chance of that, but part of me is not giving up.
Yeah, maybe they'll go back to that area in Denmark and.
Yeah, actually, I think it's a decent possibility because the lord there was a relative of Askeladd's, right?
Yeah.
So it's a decent possibility still, but anyway, anything more on Anne?
No.
All right, and do you have any other characters that you wanted to bring up?
Just very briefly mention. I'm gonna butcher his name. Gratianus.
I don't know. I mean, it sounds more like Roman kind of.
Yeah, it does. And I don't know, just that he's kind of their guide and seems to be very willing to follow Askeladd in a way, but obviously he
Mm.
wants to make sure that his country has a foothold, if you will,
Yeah,
when
yeah.
the supposed Danish kingdom overtakes England.
Hmm.
But anyway, not much to say about him, and but I think he'll still be around in the next book, right? Like, he's still traveling with him, isn't he? Or no, he stopped.
I don't
didn't
think
he?
he is.
Oh yeah,
At
yeah,
least
yeah.
because he was. I think last we saw him was when they were talking with Aser,
Yeah, you're right.
and when they was he there when they started the march, or like like the pretending to be prisoners march. Was he there then or not? I don't remember actually. He either
Oh,
left before or after that though.
you're right. You're right. So I mean, he's not going to be much of a character, I guess, going forward. But
Mm.
um, I guess I feel like he could be a potential, political piece, maybe.
Definitely. Yeah, I can definitely see that.
And that's really all I have.
Cool.
I guess we did get to see the king of Denmark,
Oh
but
yeah, Svein. The
not
or
his
yeah,
face or anything.
fork beard.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, we just got to see his neck or the back of his head.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's interesting. He doesn't seem too attached to his son at all.
Yeah. I guess that is probably a bit of a stereotype in those sort of like royal families though, isn't it?
Uh,
Like them not necessarily being that familiar.
I guess so. I mean, it depends,
They're probably always or pretty much always raised by like nannies and stuff like that anyway. Like
That's a
they're
good
not
point. Yeah.
the actual parents probably don't do a lot of parental work
Mm-hmm.
in like royal families probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I guess we'll see what kind of role he'll play.
And I guess like his goal right now is to take over England as quickly as possible.
Right.
And I don't know if there's like an urgent reason to do that, or is they just want to make sure they get it done,
Mm-mm.
So
Exactly.
I wonder how long that we'll be at war for in this story.
Yeah, because we obviously we want to, do some exploring as well. We want to get to Vinland. But yeah.
Some side quests would be great. I guess we did have a little bit of side quests here, huh?
I suppose so. But I guess that's all for all of the characters.
Yeah.
Then, final stretch of the discussion. I don't really have much in terms of predictions right now. Do you have anything?
Not really, other than maybe if the war does finally end, they can go back to Askeladd's uncle, his area, and that's how Hordaland would come.
Right.
Or not, I guess. I don't know. And I also feel that Canute will have something that might spark him to start being more of a leader.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's a possibility in this next book.
For sure.
Do you think that Thorkell will be in the next book, or have they got him off their tail?
I think he's persistent enough that he will remain.
I agree. I think that they may think he's gone, but he'll be back, especially since he has a reason to meet up with Askeladd's guy. Well, probably mostly because of Thorfinn.
Right. Yeah.
And then when he does meet, I really do hope that he goes into how he knows Thor's, and maybe we get more backstory into that.
For sure. I get the feeling it might be through the. I mean, it's pretty much got to be through the Jomsvikings. I feel.
Yeah.
Because they had both been part of that group in their past.
Oh, so he was for sure part of the Jomsvikings? I wasn't sure about that.
When Floki talked to him, I got that vibe at least that they had been comrades.
Oh, okay.
Maybe it wasn't explicitly stated, so maybe I made some assumptions, but at least that's how I understood that part, at least. So I guess that's a possibility that they know each other from having fought together, on the Jomsvikings.
Gotcha. Well, hope we get to hear more about that.
Absolutely.
And yeah, I wonder what Askeladd's plan for Canute will be, and if they're gonna hold him at ransom, against the king. I don't even know how that's gonna go down.
Right.
Exactly, if at all.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really exciting. The story is definitely getting more exciting, and it's also so interesting that we're following all these characters that really most of them are not particularly, I guess, good people. But it's still a really interesting story to follow along with. I guess we have faith in Thorfinn. Like, we believe in Thorfinn, even though he is a killer. I guess we believe in him to make the right choices and to be a good person.
Yeah.
But really, like, Askeladd and his whole gang, obviously they're terrible people. And I guess Canute has some good promise. No, but yeah, it's getting very exciting and interesting.
Absolutely. Just the war stuff, and I guess, like I was saying earlier, the kingdoms and the political boundaries there. It's really fascinating.
Yeah.
And yeah, sure, he's grabbing a lot from history, but I think he's doing a very great job at making history exciting to learn about, and telling a story through that. Obviously, it's not one-to-one, but I think it's still very well done.
Totally. And something I wanted to mention real quick also is that I thought it was really funny how at a couple points at least in volume 3, like the first part of the book here, is that was when English people were like they were hearing the Norse language, and to them it sounded like curses or witchcraft. So it was really funny to me.
I love that.
I wonder if like Swedish, Norwegian, and Danish would sound like witchcraft to like Americans these days too.
I don't know. Like, I don't know what I consider what it sounds like. It's interesting. I think, or we're speaking of the English people. There was a moment where Thorkell mentioned it's gonna take a lot more of that to make the London Bridge fall or something like that.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if that was a reference to that nursery rhyme, but
yeah.
I had heard that there was a theory that there had been Viking shenanigans that had caused the falling of London Bridge at one point. So I looked it up, and one theory is that a Norwegian Viking in the year 1014 caused the London Bridge to fall. I think his name was Olaf II or something like that.
Okay.
That's Norway, not Denmark.
Interesting. Because I do think, or I guess I shouldn't go into spoilers, historical spoilers. No, but okay, I'm gonna skip that for now. But about the London Bridge falling, I think first of all, I think there's been multiple bridges in London that have been referred to as London Bridge. And I think throughout history, a lot of them have, in one way or another, fallen. So it's been like a pretty consistent thing, probably both before this time and age that Vinland Saga takes place and after it. I think,
for sure.
But still, yeah, I was also interested in that when he made that brief little reference.
Anyway, just thought it was funny.
Absolutely, yeah. So, any final words? I think I'm pretty much done. This has been a lot of fun talking about the 3rd and 4th volumes.
Absolutely. Stoked to read the 5th and 6th volumes.
Definitely. So, with that all said, if you enjoy our content, you can follow us on Twitter at Umami Manga, and it would be lovely if you'd like to support us by either rating our show on the podcast platforms or subscribing to our channel Umami Manga on YouTube. If you like this episode, please share it with anyone you think might enjoy it too. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time when we'll talk about volumes 5 and 6. Bye bye!
See you later!